Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Welcome to the day 2 of the second International Postgraduate Student Conference 2023, Master-in-Laws of Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Your Excellency, Sri Wiyanti Ediono, SH, LLM, HR, PhD, Head of Master in Law of Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada. The Honorable, our invited speakers for today, dear sponsors who have helped make this event a success, PT Manggala Alam Lestari and Sinarmas Mining, Siregar Setiawan Manalu Partnership, Romulu Silain and Partners, PT Cantaka Nusantara Perkasa, PT Pertamina IP, and the respectable all invited guests and all of the participants. Firstly, let's pray and thanks into our God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has been giving us mercies and blessing so we can attend and gather in this event. Secondly, all prayers are presented to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the greatest leaders who has guided us from the darkness to the brightness. Before starting today's plenary session discussion, let's sing Indonesian National Anthem and Hymne Gadjah Mada together. All attendees, please stand up.
dalam Pancasila, jiwa seluruh nusaku, menjunjung kebudayaan, kejayaan Indonesia. Bagi kami alma mater, ku berjanji setia, ku peduli dharma bakti, untuk hidup berdiri di dalam persatuanmu, jiwa seluruh bangsa.
All attendees, please have a seat. Now we're going to main agenda, the plenary session with the subtheme, the current state of democracy in the post-pandemic era, challenges and opportunity. And for that, I would like to invite Mrs. Dr. Maharum Kusuma Pertiwi, MA MPhil, to be the moderator. Dear Mrs. Dr. Maharum, the time is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second plenary sessions of the International Postgraduate Student Conference, or INGRES. This year's theme is Legal Challenges and Opportunities in the Field of Human Rights, Democracy, and Social Justice in the Post-Pandemic Era. The conference is expected to develop more comprehensive post-pandemic responses by involving academia and other related actors across the world to respond, critics, solutions, and formulate our understanding of the post-pandemic era with emphasis on interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary perspective. This conference is held as part of the agenda of Dies Natalis of the Faculty of Law Universitas Gadjah Mada. And this second plenary session topic is the current state of democracy and the post-pandemic era, challenges and opportunities. Here with us today, three excellent speakers, legal experts, Professor Simon Butt, Prof. Eni Nurbaningsih, and Dr. Zainal Arifin Mohtar. So I welcome all of you, three speakers, to come join me here. Pak Zainal will be joining with us through Zoom, yeah? So. So, before we begin, I would like to read the curriculum vitae of our speakers. The first one is Professor Simon Butt. So Simon is the director of the Center for Asian and Pacific Law at the University of Sydney Law School. He also served on the executive of the Sydney Southeast Asia Center, fluent in Indonesia, so you can actually ask him in Bahasa. And Simon has consulted on Indonesian law to the private and public sector and has provided advice and expert opinions about Indonesian law for litigation in the US, UK, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Australia. And he has many publications on Indonesian law, and the forthcoming one, I think it's interesting. It's about judicial dysfunction in Indonesia. So I think Bu Eni will also interested in reading that forthcoming book. And actually, his latest book with Tim Lindsay, Indonesian Law, is also being used here as a reference to study Indonesian law. So it is very great to have Simon here, and we can learn a lot from his perspective as an expert of Indonesian law. The second speaker, Professor Dr. Eni Nurbaningsih SH MHum. She is a judge, not just an ordinary judge, of course, everyone knows her. She's the judge of the Indonesian Constitutional Court, and she began her tenure as a constitutional justice of the MKRI in 2018. And before that, she was the head of the National Legal Development Agency as an academic as well at this university. And not only a teacher, but she is also actively involved in organizations related to her legal studies. And then we have the third speaker, Pak Zainal Arifin Mohtar, or Mas Uceng. I think he already joining us from Zoom. He is an Indonesian constitutional law scholar, or there he is, and currently serve as the chairman of our beloved department, Constitutional Law Department here at the Faculty of Law Universitas Gadjah Mada. He is also a vocal academic in criticizing the government, perhaps the court as well, Prof. Eni, and as an anti-corruption activist. Zainal is often asked for comments by mass media. He has appeared on many TVs and also the moderator of the 2014 presidential and vice presidential debate. So I think we have these three excellent speakers talking about democracy. And we also will have, I think around 100 or more participants here in the room and also on Zoom. So we will have 2 hours discussion, and will be started with presentation from the speaker. So I think Simon will speak first for about 20 minutes. And then Prof. Eni will continue as the second speaker, and then Pak Zainal Arifin Mohtar, and then we will have about 50 minutes to 1 hour to discussion. Right, so I think just to start it all without taking more time of you, Simon, time is yours.
Terima kasih banyak Ibu Arum. Selamat pagi semua. Saya sebenarnya merasa kurang enak dipersilakan bicara sebelum Ibu Eni, ya, hakim dan juga profesor di sini. Tapi memang karena saya harus pergi sebelum sesi ini berakhir karena pesawatnya berangkat, saya diizinkan untuk bicara terlebih dahulu. Tapi memang saya mau memberi rasa hormat kepada Ibu dan juga Prof. Uceng yang ikut dari Makassar kalau nggak salah. Because I really should be speaking last after these 2 speakers. I would also, before I start, like to thank Fakultas Hukum UGM for inviting me and for making me feel so welcome over the last few days. Many of you may not know that I have come to UGM, Fakultas Hukum, for many years sebagai mahasiswa tahun 95 pada awalnya, but also more recently as a dosen, visiting professor. And so I am really looking forward to continuing our collaboration between myself and my university, Sydney University, and all the staff at UGM. So thank you everyone, Ibu Yik, Yante, and Pak Jeto. Thank you also Ibu Arum for making me feel so welcome. And also Ibu Dekan yang sakit kepala kemarin. Semoga sudah sembuh. Now, what I would like to do today is talk a little bit about some of the work that one of my colleagues at Sydney University has written. His name is Wojciech Sadurski. Tolong lanjut slide-nya, please. Thank you. Now, he is a legendary figure in my law school. And one of the reasons why he is a legendary figure is that he is a world-leading expert on freedom of speech, comparative freedom of speech, primarily in different European countries. But he is also an expert on Poland. He's Polish. And he has recently, a couple of years ago now, been in trouble in Poland for some of the comments he made about the regime in Poland. And for some of his comments, he was prosecuted in Poland, secara pidana. But instead of staying in Australia, where he can live forever if he would like, he is a permanent resident or a citizen of Australia, he returned to Poland to defend himself. A very risky move to do. And luckily, he was able to get much support from law professors and civil society and other groups around the world and also in Poland, and the case against him was finished. So he's safe, but very brave for taking the risk. Anyway, he is a very, very prolific author. He writes about 1 or 2 books every year or every 2 years, all very high quality books. And he, in 2019, wrote a book called Poland's Constitutional Breakdown. Now, why is this relevant to today in Indonesia and my presentation today? Well, he shows in this book how Poland's democratically elected leaders have come to control other institutions of state, including the media, courts, law enforcement, in government institutions, and the like. Now, I'm not going to talk about constitutional democracy in Poland today, but I wanted to mention something that appears at in the very last chapter of his book about Poland, which is a playbook for leaders as to how they might move a system that democratically brought them to power into a system in which all institutions are fully subordinate to the leader's will, whilst formally speaking, their design may be mistaken for normal democracy. It might be difficult to see on this slide because of the color that I chose, but you have a picture of him on the top. Below his photo is essentially what his playbook, pedoman, bagi leader yang mau menjadikan negara authoritarian lagi daripada, maksudnya kalau pada awalnya demokrasis. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, I have the main points. So this, in his experience about Poland, he knows nothing about Indonesia, by the way. His experience in Poland allowed him to crystallize 10 points, which I think are only 9 on the slides, but essentially we have all of them there. And he says all of these things happened recently in Poland, and I want you to think whether you think all of these things or some of these things have been happening in Indonesia too. So the relevance of this is that many times when I read newspapers, Indonesian newspapers, read academic journals, people are talking about democratic regression or authoritarian backsliding in Indonesia. But often they don't provide a framework for how they reach that conclusion. And this provides a very eminent scholar's views on what components of constitutional democracy can be under threat in this environment. So the first point is, or the first number in his playbook is depict the opposition as critics, or critics as disloyal, illegitimate, unpatriotic, or out of touch with real people. Now, not all of these will be entirely relevant to Indonesia because it's developed out of Polish observations about what's happening in Poland. But I wonder if you think this type of thing happens in Indonesia. It certainly did during the Suharto regime, when we had subversion laws that were used to very strongly punish critics. I remember studying about the subversion laws when I was here as a student. They were still in force. And there was a lot of talk among students about Pancasila and what control over Pancasila the government had and could use to clamp down on criticisms. Now, in this context, I'd like to draw our attention to the new criminal code, which prohibits criticism against the government and even Pancasila. And I'm sure you're all aware of these provisions, but what I've done, I hope, I've produced a set of materials which I hope you can all access. They will be shared with you. So bahan bacaan. I'll talk about a couple of pieces of literature which I've shared and you can access, I think, if not now, then after my talk. There's an article about some of the criminal provisions and how they could be used to undermine critics. There's a piece in the Indonesia at Melbourne website. It's a very good resource for material on Indonesian law by Erlangga Pribadi Kusman. Saya belum ketemu sama orang itu, tapi dia nulisnya bagus sekali mengenai KUHP yang baru. The second on the playlist is attack the independence of the courts, including by forcing the removal of judges. And Sadurski says, with a particular emphasis on the Constitutional Court. So attack the independence of the courts, particularly the Constitutional Court. Now, judicial independence in Indonesia, I think it's fair to say, has greatly improved since the fall of Suharto in the Reformasi era. There are lots of problems still with corruption, but there seems to be not so much a problem with interference by the government in the courts. But some would say that things are changing. I don't want to talk about that here, but I have included a piece of writing from Jimli Asidiki, also from the Indonesia at Melbourne website, where he talks about some of the recent developments that have been occurring in Indonesia, particularly in the Constitutional Court. So maybe Mas Ucheng will later talk about this controversy. Weakening, and the third point, weakening and demonizing the independent media and capturing or politicizing public media. Now, again, I'm not sure that this has happened in Indonesia, but many commentators have expressed concerns about the new provisions of the KUHP, where the media freedoms appear to be threatened. And I suppose it's also important to note that many of the big media owners and companies are very closely connected or associated with the major political parties. So if this has not happened, the potential is certainly there. The fifth point on Sadurski's playbook is intimidating civil society and supporting government-friendly civil society. Now, I'm not sure whether we can say that civil society is commonly or routinely intimidated in Indonesia, but I remember when the fall of Suharto occurred and civil society blossomed. Lots of different debates about what laws should be, the content of laws, how the system of government should function. But today, it seems that civil society's role has somewhat reduced. I don't know if that's because of what the government has done, and that's part of Sadurski's playbook, yeah. But he might be a bit concerned about what I think is a quite noticeable reduction in the role of civil society in Indonesia. Now, this is another important one in the context of Indonesia, politicizing the civil service, law enforcement, and the security apparatus. Now, I'm no expert on this point, but some scholars have written about how precisely this has been happening in Indonesia. So, for example, we see police operating in Indonesia, apparently on the request of prosecutors and political figures. We see a lot of police occupying political positions or positions in institutions that are quite important. And there are a lot of claims about public service capture or partiality that occur around election times. So I'm sure they will re-emerge in the coming year. The idea that the parties that are already in power can use the civil service to try and ensure that they remain in power, they are elected again. So this is the kind of thing that Sadurski, I think, is concerned about when he says politicizing the civil service and law enforcement. The next one is rewarding party faithful and supporters, which I suppose you could describe as patronage, which is quite common in Indonesia. It's fairly customary, the way things are done. The next on the playbook is controlling electoral administration. And this is also important when we talk about the Constitutional Court, which of course not only resolves election disputes, but hears many cases about the electoral systems that are used in Indonesia and has shaped many of those systems, even those that are used today and will be used next year when we have the next round of elections. One of the points I would make here is a very notable increase in the power of Parliament. So when Indonesia became a democracy, the parliamentary powers of the national parliament were strengthened, the presidential powers were reduced. Now, because there's a block in parliament that is big, it can basically do whatever it likes to. And some would say, you know, this is a kind of almost a form of democratic authoritarianism. The interesting point that I wanted to make about control of institutions is the concept of the fit and proper test. Now, on paper, the fit and proper test sounds very democratic. So you have your democratically elected parliamentarians scrutinizing appointments to important government positions, institution positions, including those that control elections. I think now, because the parliament is so big in a block, it's often, the fit and proper test is often now used to ensure that those who are selected for particular positions are those that might be likely to favour the interests of the parties and indeed the government, the executive. So this is also, I think, a bit of a red flag issue in Indonesia. The next on Sadurski's playlist is redesigning contours of freedom of assembly and speech. And there are, of course, new issues, problems with this when we talk about the new criminal code provisions. And of course, these aren't new problems in Indonesia. We've had them for a long time with for example, the ITE law, the Electronic Information Law. And the final point on Sadurski's playbook is playing a cat and mouse game with international attempts at monitoring and criticizing the performance or the practices of a particular government and trying to depict them as illegitimate. Now, along this part of the playbook, it would involve Indonesia, for example, rejecting international criticism, which it has certainly done in the past in relation to human rights or alleged human rights abuses. I'm not sure that Indonesia does that as much anymore. It certainly responds to reports by UN agencies and defends its own practices, but it doesn't attempt to delegitimize the whole international scale, international infrastructure. And I suppose you could also say that perhaps this point is not as significant for Indonesia as it might be for Poland, because Indonesia is much bigger, and I think maybe it could ignore what the international community says about it if it was in its interests to do so. So that's Sadurski's playbook. Now, I've also included in the materials the chapter from his book in which this playbook appears. He admits to drawing a lot of his ideas from the work of Larry Diamond, who's a very well-known political scientist. He also writes about Indonesia sometimes. But he's added some of his own from the Polish experience. Perhaps you could start thinking about what you might add to the Indonesian experience if you indeed think that there is a trend towards or away from democracy, as some people might argue. I think in all of this, the Constitutional Court of Indonesia in particular is very important because it acts as really the last bastion, as a check on the exercise of government power. And, it can ensure that even the legislature, as well as the executive, but the legislature, the ultra-powerful institution in Indonesia, does not become too powerful and sticks to the rules of the game that are in the Constitution. Well, I think I was going to talk about the next stuff, but I think I can. Okay. I think that I will leave my presentation there. Yeah, I could have talked for longer, but hopefully this is enough to generate some discussion, some questions.
Please give applause. So, well, actually, Simon has introduced this interesting work by Sadurski, and I think it could be seen as maybe it's happening in Indonesia or not. The question would be to Prof. Eni, what should we anticipate particularly on the electoral dispute, because next year we will going to have one of the biggest election in Indonesia. So, time is yours, Prof. Eni.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Arum. Professor Simon, it's a pleasure to meet you here in my faculty, in my hometown. Usually we meet in Constitutional Court, now we meet in here in my faculty. And Your Honor, my boss, Professor Ucheng, using Zoom, yeah, he's a boss in my faculty because he is head of Department of Constitutional Law. I think it is a very difficult time to be here, to be my faculty, to be my hometown. Meanwhile, the court face, this is not a good, I think this is not good case, still on process. But I think it is great. It is a great start of the year for the faculty to be host of the international conference hosted by the Faculty of Law, Gadjah Mada University. For me, academic meetings like this can be means of functional dialogues that can broaden and develop a new perspective for development of law in Indonesia. I think the theme for this international conference is an important agenda for Indonesia, particularly for developing democracy and social justice in post-pandemic era. Based on this interesting theme, I would like to share how the role of the Constitutional Court of Indonesia to anticipate dispute over simultaneous election in 2020. In this valuable opportunity, I would like also to share the role of the court during the pandemic era. As we know, one of the main provisions of the Constitution is the protection of the citizen constitutional. Even in pandemic, personal rights of citizens must still be protected. Under the Constitution, the matter is clearly stated in the fourth paragraph of the preamble of the Constitution, which states that the goals and objective of the state is to protect the nation and homeland of Indonesia entirely. It means there are no other interpretation for the purpose is establishing a state government other than aiming to protect every citizen under any condition and against anyone who can harm the constitutional rights as citizen. It is related with Solus Popula Suprema Lex X2, that the security of safety of the people is the highest law as a goal of the state government as stated in the Indonesian Constitution. The pandemic significantly gave a hard impacts of all the activities. In terms of law, many legal aspects from various branches of law are also affected in such complicated and complex manner due to the outbreak. The same condition applies to the law enforcement, especially in the judicial institution. The trials that are commonly held open for the public, the cases registration that are also carried out face-to-face. In this outbreak condition, certainly will no longer possible to do. Even if it has to be done face-to-face, it must be in the condition that comply with the health protocols. How does the judiciary protect the citizen rights, including democracy and social justice? In terms of this, let me take this opportunity to explain the role of the Indonesian Constitutional Court in resolving various disputes. I want to share first, the Indonesian Constitutional Court has the 5 constitutional powers: to examine the constitutionality of laws, to decide on dispute over authority between state institutions, to decide on the dissolution of political parties, to decide on dispute over the result of election, and the last one, to proceed the impeachment process of the president and or vice president. Through these authorities, the Constitutional Court has succeeded in resolving conflicts that have caused the public attention. The fulfillment of the citizen constitutional rights by the Constitutional Court experiences different challenges during the pandemic, including unusual challenge in carrying out trial by judicial review cases and the direct regional head election dispute cases in 2020. For example, during the pandemic, the Constitutional Court handled the 2020 regional election cases with the total number of 154 cases. with a total of 9 applications for the provincial level, 131 applications for the district level, and 40 applications for the civil level. Praise and gratitude to God, I think, that the 2020 local elections have been carried out as well as possible, including holding a trial with strictly enforced health protocols. The matter that also merits serious attention at this international conference is the extent to which the Constitutional Court can provide protection for human rights and democracy in the post-pandemic, especially in safeguarding the principle of free and fair election in resolving simultaneous general election dispute in 2024. I want to share that historically, the holding of simultaneous election is basically a mandate from the Constitutional Court decision number 14 of 2013 on judicial review of the presidential election law. According to the decision, the election which had been held separately will be held simultaneously in 2019. The follow-up on the court decision was done by the House of Representatives (DPR) and the President by creating the law number 7 of 2070 on the election law. Regarding the design of the simultaneous general election, it has been decided by the Constitutional Court through decision number 55 of 2019 on a judicial review of the local election law, where the court expressed its stand on the SIG model of the simultaneous election. The court also stressed that the legislature have the prerogative to choose any model of implement, not the court to choose it. Moreover, based on the Constitutional Court decision number 67 of 2021 on a judicial review of the local election law, the National Simultaneous General Election, or PAMILU, where the legislature in 2024 has been designed to take place in 2 stages. The first stage is a simultaneous election to elect member of DPR, House of Representatives, DPD, and President and Vice President, and also DPRD, Regional Legislative Council, and will be held on 14 February next year. And the second stage is a simultaneous regional head election, or PERKADA, will be held on 27 November. The simultaneous voting for an integration of the elected candidate pairs hopefully would contribute to effectiveness and efficiency of development policy between the region and the central government. Speaker and participant, the protection of democratic principle by the Constitutional Court contributes to a peaceful transition of government in the 2024 simultaneous election. The Constitutional Court must ensure that the principle of free and fair election are implemented and that state actors respect to the Constitution. Looking at the Constitutional Court decision regarding the previous election dispute, the Constitutional Court has been requested to act as an independent referee to Indonesia's top political contests. For example, the Constitutional Court has decided 1,812 cases of disputes over the result of presidential, legislative, and regional head election. I think this long experience of the Constitutional Court in resolving election dispute and establishing parameters and criteria for election violation can actually be an example and reference for other countries, especially for countries that have no or less experience in resolving election cases. In the 2090 general election, the Constitutional Court managed to ensure that general election went well and was successful. Maybe we still remember, you can open maybe YouTube now, Indonesia presidential election in 2090 resulted in polarization of society. The two opposing, Jokowi and Prabowo, came attack each other and threw accusation, resulting in division among the nation people. In the end, the presidential election dispute led to be a lawsuit at the Constitutional Court with a transparent, accountable, and marathon case examination process from morning till morning in the following days. The Constitutional Court succeeded in resolving the dispute over the presidential election result in less than 14 days. The decision of the Constitutional Court, which consists of 1,944 pages, was relatively acceptable to the parties. It became a momentum for political and social reconciliation, not only for the rival presidential election candidates, but also for the people who are divided because of their political choices. Furthermore, in the context of regional head election, the Constitutional Court often makes legal breakthrough by prioritizing the fulfillment of substantive justice and not merely the fulfillment of procedural justice. I want to stress about it because some people said MK as a mahkamah kalkulator. It is not true. Not all violations that occur in regional head election can result in the cancellation of the result. Generally, the Constitutional Court can annul the election result if there are structured, systematic, and massive violation. Even if an election violation is proven, the Constitutional Court will not automatically make the petitioner the winner. In the interest of the wider public and with full prudence, the court will order a recount of votes of a re-election to be held in the relevant location. With the existence of an independent judiciary that is capable of resolving electoral dispute, political conflict can be resolved or at least better prevented. In this context, the Constitutional Court plays an important and strategic role in order to keep the consolidation or democracy progressing well. The court will not only determine who will be the president, legislature, and regional head, but also more importantly, the future of Indonesia democracy as the legitimacy of the electoral process is at stake. As Indonesia heads toward the highly competitive 2024 simultaneous election, the Constitutional Court has already revised the number of regulations regarding the procedure of the presidential, legislative, and regional head dispute to complete the lack of a previous process that everyone or petitioner feel easy to bring the case or the result of the election to the court. The court made the procedure more effective for facing electoral dispute. As we know, the procedure for solving electoral result dispute is a part of a speedy trial. This is a speedy trial. For presidential result, only 14 days. For legislator result dispute, 30 days. And for regional head dispute, only 45 days. All regulations of the procedure have to be published and socialized with all the political party, success team success, and also lawyer, advocates in the forum of technical guidance, or BIMTEC, or TOT, helped by the Constitutional Court. Like this week, we have agenda for the representative of some political party alternately, like 2 days ago to PKB and Golkar. As usual, the court provides the technical making application for all participants so that they can make a good application to the court if reflects access to justice or achieving electoral justice as well. The process of examination these political cases must be carried out transparently and accountably, and decision must have adequate legal reasoning. Thus, the feeling of political disappointment and frustration from the candidate who lost in the election will be channeled properly through a trusted trial process. Therefore, the election must have high legitimacy, credibility, and public trust. Well, regarding the matter, I suppose any question that is addressed to me in available opportunity, I'd like to inform you all regarding the recent issue that mentioned the court decision change. In terms of this, the court already established the Honorary Council of Constitutional Court to investigate. Is it true that there has been a change on procedural the court decision? Now the MK, this is not double MK, this is the name of Honorary Council, still has been working on the process. I hope we could be patient to hear the result of the MK. We have to hear parties related to this issue based on the procedure of Constitutional Court regulation that agreed by MK in accordance with the elucidation of Article 27A on Law Number 7. I think this is not possible to cover all aspects of the topic in single presentation. Summarizing the above, I would like to note that the role of the court is to make sure a peaceful transition of government in 2024 simultaneous election. The court must also ensure that the principle of free and fair election are implemented. I think that this international conference will help us better understand that the issue raised for discussion, exchange positive experiences, and develop effective ways to solve legal challenges and opportunities in the field of human rights, democracy, and social justice. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Penny. So actually, MK is ready to settle electoral dispute next year in speed trial and not just as calculator, yeah, Prof. We're waiting for that. So, Mas Ucheng, seeing the challenges Prof. Simon and Prof. Eni already said about Indonesian democracy, what would be the prospect for saving constitutional democracy in Indonesia? Time is yours for 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bu Arum. Do you hear my voice clearly? Okay.
Yes, we can, yeah.
Okay. I would like to say thank you very much for this opportunity, or this, it's kind of honor for me to presenting something in front of you, two very famous professors here, Bu Eni and also Pak Simon, and also in front of a lot of speakers and a lot of colleagues here. Thank you very much again. First of all, I have to say that my presentation, simple presentation, is only kind of 9 slides. Actually, I will provide, I will explain some problems. Yeah, so I will provide some challenge for Indonesia, and it's kind of problems. So I'm sorry for Pak Simon and Bu Eni. Maybe my presentation will be will provide a problem, not solution. Yeah, because solution will belongs to both of you. you're supposed to try to find solution for these things. Also belongs to all of us. Okay. Next slide. One. Okay. I will present actually only 5 between a lot of problems in democracy, yeah, in Indonesia. And also, I only provide 5 specially related to election, not in broader sense of democracy itself. So I only provide challenge related to election, and also provide problem on election itself. So I'll try to provoke all of you to think more deeper about 5 thema on my presentation. The first one will be about third-termism and the failure of the election. The second one about cheated election. The third one, election organizers fraud. And last time change on election system. And the last thing about constitutional court has been domesticated, or domesticated constitutional court. Please, next slide. Okay. About third-termism and the failure of election, I will start my discussion with my experience, my story about my own story to meet Pak Mahfud. Yeah, I met Pak Mahfud in the beginning of this year. Actually, we talk about a lot of things, and then I asked one question to Pak Mahfud. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that all of you already know who Pak Mahfud is. I asked Pak Mahfud when he will begin to begin his candidacy for president. I asked about his opinion, about his chance, about his desire to be a candidate for president. But the answer shocked me. Yeah, the answer shocked me, because he said that actually I'm not thinking about the candidacy, but I'm thinking about the election itself. Do the election will happen or not? Yeah, can you imagine? Coordinator Ministry on Politics, Law and Defense in Indonesia still not sure about the election in 2024. So I asked him why, and he talked a lot of things about the movement of third-termism and how to failure the election. So this is the story as my introduction. That is, I think it's something very serious. Yeah. Then this is Indonesian, one of the possibilities for Indonesian third-termism, actually, is to cancel the election. So if we talk about third-termism, mostly happen in West Africa, yeah, and some sub-Sahara. A lot of articles and journals on you can find in internet, in Google, but not only in both area, but also in some European countries like Russia, Turkey, Venezuela, also considered as in this condition. So the third-termism is the phenomenon of leader seeking to break constitutional terms limit. Yeah, so sometimes it's kind of phenomena, the leader try to break constitutional term limit, which is usually set to terms in office, but the leader, yeah, seeking to secure the third term in office. So it's kind of the leader refuse refuse to leave their power. So in Indonesia, mostly related to Jokowi. You can read some articles, some news about that. Indonesia mostly related to Jokowi and some senior ministers like Luhut. They talk a lot about this penundaan pemilu and third-termism in Indonesia. There are some ways, to fail the election, not only third-termism, but also toward failing the election itself. How does it work? Of course, with the amendment of the Constitution, there are several scenarios on the amendment. Like if you read Tempo several days ago, it wrote that try to back to the first amendment. It means that the president under first amendment still has 2 periods, but the election not belongs to people, but belongs to MPR. The president will be selected in MPR. Another scenario is prolong the periods, or to make a transition period, 2.5 years, if you read Tempo several days ago. So the problem is in democratic state, it's lack of constitutionalism and no limitation of powers, because the most important thing in constitutionalism, one of the most important thing in constitutionalism, of course, is limitation of power. And you have to read, students here have to read, Giorgio Agamben. Giorgio Agamben was one of philosophical scholar, wrote very interesting book about relation between democracy and emergency situation. So the relation, it's kind of ironic relation, because democracy related to emergency, but at the same time, leaders who admit as Democrat use the emergency as the reason to step aside from democracy itself. So in a democratic state, a state of emergency is always the reason to step aside the democracy itself. During the pandemic, specifically for pandemic situation, cause a lot of democratic standard have been stepped aside. The problem is, what if, the problem is, of course, what if the regime, what if they try to emergencying, everything, and use the condition as the reason to step aside the standard of democracy. We can talk a lot about Indonesian experience, how they try to make everything like emergency, and then it goes, they can step aside the standard of democracy, like how we dealing with KPK laws, how we dealing with Cipta Kerja, and so on and so on. So this is the first issue I raised in this presentation. Next. Okay, my second issue is cheated election. Okay, cheated election is how the political actor is still using the election as their way to transfer the power, but at the same time, the election itself has been corrupted. So the election still happened, but the election itself has been corrupted. Of course, it means that the election itself lack of electoral integrity. If we talk about electoral integrity, one of the most important thing as enemy in electoral integrity is money politics, and Indonesia has a very serious problem with money politics. You can read a lot of research paper about Indonesian condition of money politics, like Burhanuddin Muhtadi, Edward Espinel, and Baron Scott. We have also Mada Sukmajati. If we use Muhtadi analysis, he said that Indonesian election in 2019, Indonesia number 3, the worst money politics in the world after Benin and Angola. Yeah, with a range between 19.1 to 33.1% of voters. So if we talk about Indonesia has around 190 million voters, it means that 40 to 60 among them are considered paid voters. Yeah, so this is very important, very serious situation, because we are number 3, the worst country in the world. Yeah, and of course, Benin and Angola cannot be put as good example on democracy itself. Okay, and the second problem of cheated democracy is about hoaxes and disinformation. We must remember that political machine produce hoaxes and disinformation, especially to distort the election in Indonesia. In Indonesia, yeah, the world third largest democracy and country that is among the top 5 users of Facebook and Twitters. And fake news has been used to deepen existing social, ethnic, religious division and a polarization of identity politics for political gain. Mostly happen in Twitter and Facebook. Yeah, even though in reality, not only in internet, but also happen both in national and local election. So we have to have a solution for this. And the cheated election also can be designed, yeah, by apparatus using their authority. For example, like for Pilkada, we already have a particular article for reducing probability of the apparatus or public official using their power to intervene the election. Even though those articles are very fragile, very weak, yeah, rules to protecting Pilkada from the apparatus power. But specific for president, there is no special rules to avoid probability of president using their power to intervene in the election. If we talk about, we can say is lame duck rules. Yeah, we have no lame duck rules for inter-time election. A lame duck, yeah, or outgoing politician is when an elected official whose successor has already been elected or will be soon. Yeah, so the position when an elected official whose successor has already been elected or will be soon. An outgoing politician is often seen as having less influence with other politicians due to their limited time left in office. In the other hand, or conversely, a lame duck is free to make decisions that exercise the standard powers with little fear of consequences, such as issuing executive orders, pardons, or other controversial skills, other controversial rules or edicts. So the transition of the government's authority during this period is one of the very fundamental problem in the Indonesian administrative system. So that's why I highly recommend it to provide kind of these things for the next 2024, because like in some speakers already, some art expert already said Jokowi looks like very try to intervene, yeah, into the election 2025. So I think that's the second issue. Next, this is very important. The third one is we talk about election organizers fraud. This is recent issue in the Indonesian political landscape that General Election Commission or KPU is the holder responsibility for organizing the election, but the problem is the lack of impartiality of KPU. KPU looks like not independent, yeah, in some issues. As the referee, KPU is supposed to be more independent, of course, especially independent from political parties. And that's why, how come one of the commissioners, yeah, admit as part of political party in front of public? He said about his position as a part of political party. In the other hand, we ask for his independency, but in the other hand, he said about his lack of partiality, lack of impartiality. So if we read some news, yeah, and also advocacy from NGO, Koalisi Kepemiluan, if you read and the proof presented by them proven, it will provide a lot of proof that KPU is doing some fraudulent things. They push, for example, they push the provincial KPU to change the data on political parties verification. So there is why we can say that the process political party verification has been manipulated. Yeah, and then now it brings to DKPP. It is impossible if, of course, yeah, the referee are not independent. So this is why I hope DKPP will deal with this wisely, because the impact is very serious. The commissioners can be dismissed from their position. And if they dismiss from their position, it kind of a new problem. Yeah, because my question is, do we have to replace the whole commissioners or not? I do agree, of course, yeah, to dismiss all of the commissioners, but the problem is not easy, because it can be used as the reason to postpone the election for some political interest. They use this, we try to dismiss the commissioners, but they will use this as the reason to postpone the election. So it's kind of from one danger to another danger. Yeah, we try to purify the KPU, but at the same time, it can be used the reason to postpone the election. So we have to think about this not only wisely, but also deeply. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, election system, last time change in election system. Another issue in Indonesia politics is about election system. Yeah, there is about closed list proportional versus open list proportional. Now this case brings to under constitutional court. So maybe Prof. Eni cannot take a part of this issue, but I will say, but in the other hand, we have to say closed list proportional means we choose only a party that in turn decide exclusively decide the winning candidate proportionate to the number of the candidate. Yeah, that's we can say that's a closed list proportional system. In the other hand, open list proportional means we can select the party and or the candidate, and the winning candidate proportionate to the most significant votes. Of course, this is about system, yeah, but both of the system have advantages and disadvantages, of course. But we have to choose, I think, open list proportional for some reason. Firstly, because it has been decided by Constitutional Court before in 2008. Yeah, the decision stipulated that the four most important thing is people sovereignty. So that is why Constitutional Court still has consider. I think Constitutional Court has to consider this again. And secondly, this is in the middle of the process of election. So the process already settled up with open list proportional system, and how come they try to change the system in the middle of the process? The problem is why we change the system only based on the advantages for some party. So that's why we supposed to back, yeah, to the voters. We have to back to the people of people's sovereignty, of course. Next slide, because I have to be wise with time. Yeah, I know only 10 minutes to the Prof. Simon has to leave this. So I will try to make it short. Yeah, the last time about Constitutional Court domesticated. Surrounded by many issues in its challenges in Indonesian election, I think the most worrying thing is the ability of Constitutional Court to stand independently. In some cases, I think Constitutional Court has been domesticated, yeah, by political interest. The political interest provides not only by the parties, but also the judges itself. If you can read the dissenting opinion by one judge in constitutional judicial review in Constitutional Court about Constitutional Court laws, yeah, Pak Wahidudin Adams, he wrote very clearly, and you can find the intrigue between judges in their decision on that case. So that's why I think the political interest provides not only by political party, but also by the judges itself. And also Aswanto case, maybe. Yeah, Aswanto case can be read as how political party interests intervene in the Constitutional Court. How come the judges, how come the judge, how come Aswanto can be dismissed from the office based on like or dislike by political party. So my last slide. Next. So maybe it's kind of very short or very like a simple way to say that democracy needs a commitment. Yeah. Indonesia is known as number 3 of the biggest democratic state because of the number of their population, of course. But in substance of democracy, we still in the middle to the bottom position, flawed democracy. So it's kind of ironic, yeah, with the number 3 largest democracy state, but at the same time, we still flawed. We still have a lot of problems. And I think the problem only can be solved if all of us take part actively. Yeah, as a citizen, as a voters, we need a commitment. Not only us, citizens and voters, but also state, president, legislative, and also Bu Eni and her colleague in constitutional court and also constitutional and also Supreme Court, of course. So that's my simple presentation. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi.
Thank you so much, Pak Zainal, for the presentation, and then excuse us for the time limitation. I think because Simon, I think you should leave in about 15 minutes. So I would invite the question for Simon first, if there's any. Yeah, 2, and then perhaps the other question for the other speaker will be later on. Yeah. So.
Jangan yang tajam-tajam ya.
Thank you very much. My name is Muhammad Isnawahyudi. I am the representation of judicial institution. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for inviting us to this conference. We are pleased to join this conference, and there are also my partner from administrative courts, from the district courts also. And I'd like to address my question to Prof. Simon. I'm not sure if my question is exactly related to our today's topic, but it is related to judicial independence. Until this time, the status of judges in Indonesia is still located between state official or pejabat negara and state apparatus. I think Ibu Eni is exceptional. Such condition has led a difficulty for the Supreme Court to conduct judges' recruitment and has resulted in the lack of judges. As long as judges still as state apparatus, it will also open abuse of power by the executive, because state apparatus is under the control of the executive. And broadly speaking, the most important is how to create well-being of judges, or judicial well-being. And my question is, what do you think about the condition of judges in Indonesia within dualism of status, and what is the status of judges supposed to be in Indonesia as a state official or state apparatus? Thank you very much.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. Your Honor, Professor Eni Nurbaningsi, Dr. Zainal Arifin Mohtar, Professor Simon, Ibu Moderator, Maharung Kusuma Pratiwi, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Samantha Elizabeth Fitzgerald. I'm from Universitas Tarumanagara, and I would like to address this question to Professor Simon before. Thank you so much for the fruitful insight before. And I would like to address regarding one of the elements or points that you pointed out according to Sadurski's playbook regarding deflecting international criticism as one of the practices to enhance democracy in Indonesia. You had mentioned before that according to Sadurski's playbook, that Indonesia that according to Sadurski playbook, Indonesia could focus on deflecting international criticism as a way to enhance democracy when we are actually a developing country, and perhaps the criticism could help support the development of Indonesia, or perhaps as a more open question, to be more neutral, when or what do you think is the limit to when Indonesia should or shouldn't acknowledge international criticism? That's more or less about my question. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I think we hold on to the other questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much for these very good questions. Maybe I start with the last one and come back to you, Pak, supaya saya masih bisa pikir ya, karena jawabannya susah. Yeah. Now, actually, Professor Sadurski does not talk about Indonesia at all. He only talks about Poland. And so the 10 points that he makes, I explained so that we can compare where Indonesia sits in the playbook, and really using it as some form of tool to determine whether, or to describe whether Indonesia is, constitutional democracy is on the decline. So it's like a framework. And the point about the international criticism, if a country can be criticized by, for example, UN agencies or other countries, for example, for human rights abuses, maybe they will be shamed into fixing the human rights problem. Maybe, yeah, if they're criticized enough, if there's enough support from many countries around the world, maybe we see a change in behavior from a country that is engaging in human rights violations. That's one example. Now, Indonesia has certainly been criticized by international agencies for various human rights issues. And we heard about this yesterday, right? Some of the cases that have occurred in Indonesia have been prompted by international criticism. So, for example, some of the cases that arose after East Timor were in fact decided by Indonesian tribunals, but behind the scenes, the UN was threatening to arrange international tribunals if it was not fixed domestically, not handled domestically. Maybe not the UN, but international community, International Criminal Court, maybe. So the point that Sadurski is making is if Indonesia could just say, mengabaikan saja, itu kurang legitimate, maksudnya International Criminal Court untuk melakukan hal ini, or the UN criticism is wrong, or something like that. Yeah, then it would be easy. This is part of the playbook. So even though it may be criticized, it can say to the domestic population, well, the criticism is not legitimate, right? So that is the main thinking behind that element of the playbook. Yeah, thank you. Now, about the status of judges, of course, I know the issue in Indonesia, and I'm also very much aware that I come from a common law country where the system is very different. So in Australia, I know Australia is a small country, but it's one of many countries in the common law tradition, which are much bigger, like England and America, or most states of America. Now, in my country, judges were lawyers first. And so lawyers understand, or many lawyers understand, the importance of judicial independence, of creating persuasive legal arguments. So when they have finished a very good career in as barristers usually, advokat, baru saja diangkat menjadi hakim. Now I know that so they have an independent mindset, maybe we could say generally speaking. There would be some exceptions, but generally speaking, they are good quality and they are independent. Now in Indonesia and many other civil law countries, we have a different system where judges are public servants, or at least are trained and take the judicial career from the very beginning. And some say that this creates some scholars, some writers say that this creates a mindset that is less dynamic, more closed. And unfortunately, I think that what happens when judges are considered, are formally civil servants, is that their role is not appreciated. They are not given the status that they should have, because they are really in charge of a very important job. So I agree that PNS might not be the best way for judges to be employed, because they get divided loyalties, they're kind of narrow in their thinking. But at the same time, and again, I'm talking from a different legal tradition, the model is used in other places, and the model works in other places. So, it's a difficult question. Personally, I think judges should have a special status.
I think you still have 7 minutes to say. If you have any questions for the other speakers, or if not, then maybe I have a question for you, or your as well as your closing statement, perhaps.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Because I wonder if you have any comment for the latest MK case.
No, not yet.
No, not yet. Okay,
Not
because
yet.
it's still on proceeding. Right. And if you have any comment to Pak Zainal's presentation as well.
Yeah, I liked your presentation, Pak Zainal, and I liked yours too, Ibu, Eni. Yeah, of course, very interesting. And what I think is interesting is that everyone is focusing on the next election. Yeah, we're not talking about recent cases or structural changes in the law. We're all talking about the election, even though it is still more than 1 year away, which of course is understandable, unless, as Zainal says, Prof. Mahfud's predictions, concerns are true about third termism. I hope not. But again, as has been the case in all elections since the establishment of the Constitutional Court's role is central. And as Ibu Eni says, not just sebagai mahkamah kalkulator, menghitung kembali suaranya, but as a provider of keadilan substantif, substantive justice. Now, the problem, as always, for the Mahkamah Konstitusi is the size of the job. It's a massive job. So if we think that during election time, it's very difficult for electoral officials to survive, masih hidup pada akhir polling, because many sadly have died. For the Constitutional Court, the battle, the struggle continues for many weeks after. And so all the Constitutional Court judges also need to menjaga kesehatan supaya enggak sakit. But anyway, so yes, it's going to be an interesting period. We're already looking towards the election, and let's hope that, as Prof. Zainal cautioned, that we don't have money politics, we don't have politicization of the bureaucracy, and not just in local government offices, but also the KPU. This point that Zainal made, Uchang made, was something that does come into the playbook as well, this idea of the politicization of elections and also the capture of public servants. Yeah, so let's hope that the Constitutional Court continues to do this important work in a professional way as it has in the past.
Simon, so I'm aware that you need to catch your flight.
Yes.
So
Yes, I'm very sorry because the flights to Australia are sangat terbatas sekarang.
Yeah.
Jadi saya harus mengatur jadwalnya sesuai dengan jadwal pesawat daripada jadwal acara. Jadi saya mohon maaf sekali ya, tidak mau dianggap tidak menghormati ya.
okay, thank you so
See you
much,
next
and
week.
please give applause to Simon first. Okay, so we will continue for the question to Prof. Eni and Dr. Zainal Arifin Mokhtar. I invite the questions from the participant here. So 3 first, yeah, 1, 2, and there's one. No, okay, 2 of you. Okay, you're going to be the third. Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask? Okay, so my name is Amalia, and I'm from Siregar Setiawan Manul Partnership. And it is well known that many of our politicians using bot and also buzzer, and also using our personal information that acquire from third party to targeted such hoax and disinformation to gain a vote. And we are aware that it is unethical, but do you think it is possible for such practice to be prevented in this digitalized era to ensure that our election is not cheated? And also the second question is, if the case regarding this unethical practice filed to the Constitutional Court, would it be considered and examined? That's it. Thank you.
Test. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. Please welcome. My name is Aini. I'm from Universitas Gadjah Mada, undergraduate law student. And please excuse my bad English. And firstly, I wanna ask if the Prof. Any mind if I ask my question in Bahasa, because I don't know how to say it in English. Okay. Thank you, and ini berhubungan juga dengan tema kita pada pagi hari ini, yaitu era setelah pandemik. Pandemi ini udah ngubah banyak hal di dunia kita, di seluruh dunia, termasuk Indonesia, terutama dalam penggunaan media sosial, baik itu Facebook, Twitter, seperti yang dikatakan oleh Prof. Zainal. Nah, di sini salah satunya itu yang terubah adalah mengenai hak asasi, salah satunya mengenai kebebasan, seperti kebebasan berpendapat, kemudian kebebasan berekspresi, dan sebagainya. Nah, Indonesia sebagai negara demokrasi ini tentunya ingin menjamin kebebasan itu untuk terus terjaga di era digital ini. Namun di sisi lain juga Indonesia itu membatasi kebebasan yang terlalu bebas seperti LGBTQ+. Nah, sebagian orang menganggap hal itu melanggar hak, tetapi sebagian orang juga menganggap bahwa itu adalah sesuatu hak yang harus dijamin oleh negara. Nah, pertanyaan saya, bagaimana Indonesia dapat menjaga hak itu tanpa membatasi hak tersebut? Seperti itu. Terima kasih.
Participants to
Test. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I would like to say thank you so much for the opportunity and the time. My questions are intended to Mas Ucheng. So one of the challenges on the election that Mas Ucheng has presented is cheated election, and it showed a data that 19 to 33%, if I'm not wrong, it is the third worst after two states, of course for Indonesia. Yeah? And I assume that money politics mean the candidates give money to people in order to choose them in upcoming elections. And this means our elections is like marketing things, you know, like you give something and you get something. In order to choose them in upcoming elections. Dan sependek pengetahuan saya, demokrasi should be competing of their idea untuk periodenya andai terpilih nanti. And my next question is, why our political habit, why the candidates do not conduct some debates or discussion to compete their idea in university, since there are many teachers, professors in university? Is it because the education institutions cannot be intervened by political event? Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
so much. So, because Mas Ucheng is now in Makassar and the Friday prayer will begin soon, I will let Mas Ucheng, Pak Zainal, to answer the question first before Bu Eni. But Mas Ucheng, there are also some questions from Zoom. So you can also read on the chat book, but I will read it quickly for you. The first one is, what is your view on the concept of proportional elections for Indonesia's current condition, whether open or closed proportional? And then the second question is, it is known that Indonesia is a democratic country. What do you think regarding the election of regional head in the capital city, selected by the president directly and not by the people? Yeah, to you, Mas Ucheng.
Thank you, Arom. I'll start about the question about Pilkada. Yeah, I have to answer the question by two ways. The firstly, by legally. If I say about legally, we not only talk about the tax, but also the reason behind tax, or the risalah, for an example. So if you read the risalah of Undang-Undang Dasar, when amended 4 times in 1999 to 2002, actually stipulated that the reason why they put words kepala daerah dipilih secara demokratis. Demokratis means, yeah, if you read that, only because at that time they still thinking about the process. They still thinking about the process. Do we have to put in DPR, DPRD, local legislative, or we have to put directly to the people. If you read the Jim Lee's book, he said that clearly everybody talk about we have to choose directly by people. So that's why if you read again the risalah of our constitution, you can find that the meaning of dipilih secara demokratis means that dipilih directly by people. So you can read that. The second one, I will answer the question by morally. If we talk about morally, I always say that the most important thing in election, of course, the people's sovereignty. So that's why, if you ask me about the head of provincial election or pilkada, I will say supposed to be directly by people. The second question about the technology. I will give my short comment about technology. The technology, of course, can provide a lot of good things. A lot of advantage around the technology, but at the same time, it's easy to be hacked. I have to say this. I have to tell my story. 3 days ago, I met one person, oligarch. He's oligarch. He said that he already had special instrument to interfere or to hack the technology, especially for information data about the result of election. So that's why I'm very worrying if you said that technology can be used or not in 2024. I think we can use that as far as we can protect in good sense. We can protect the data, we can protect the process in good sense from hack or from hijacking by someone. Another question about what? Can you remind me, Mbak Arum?
The first one is about the concept of proportional election. And then the IKN, the election for the IKN Ibu Kota Negara governor.
You can watch my YouTube channel. I already explained that deeply with Pak Yance. I saw Pak Yance before. You can see that to get the answer clearly. Any other question, Bu Arum? The last thing.
I think those all the questions that we already got. But since we still have 9 minutes, so I think if there are more questions for Dr. Zainal, so we have one.
One person, the last guy.
About the head of IKN that being appointed directly by the president, and then the proportionality election.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you have to read also my my presentation. I already put my account into my proportional open list proportionality as my chosen one for the best for Indonesia.
Okay, do you have 5 more minutes for one more question for you?
Okay, of course.
One question, I think we get over there. Yeah, for you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. My name is Septi Widya, and I want to ask, recently there has been an issue regarding a closed and open proportional system in Indonesia, and Mas Ucheng also mentioned that earlier. And the judicial review from the MK has also decided that the system to be used next year is an open or proportional system. So I want to ask, how do people choose candidates wisely and not confused? Remember that using an open proportional system, there are so many candidates, names on the surat suara, and of course there are lots of names. Meanwhile, if we use a closed proportional system, it will make it easier for ordinary people to vote for parties. I think that's enough for me. Thank you so much.
That's a similar question about the proportional system, yeah, open and close, and Mas Uceng already answered that you can read it in the presentation, but because some students here are actually the student of the constitutional law class, so we can also discuss this more on our forthcoming class next week, yeah. Mas Uceng, for your closing statement, please. I invite you to give a closing statement.
Thank you, Bu Arum. I think I have to restate my last statement before in my last presentation. I said that democracy need commitment. Yeah, so that's why all of us has to pay more attention to this commitment. All of us, I mean, the students, lecturers, judges, president, minister, and everyone. I think we have to put our commitment, because without commitment, it's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult. So that's why, as voters, I always ask young voters, especially in this session, because young voters in Indonesia, it's very large scale of young voters. Young voters mean the first time to be voters, and maybe the second time will be the voters for 2024. I think we have to use our vote wisely. We have to put our vote clearly, without the money politics, without any other something intervene our votes. So if you are I think if you are human rights activist, please don't choose a political party violator of human rights. At the same time, if you are anti-corruption activist, please do not choose corruption political party very near with corruption. And also, if you are feminist, yeah, please don't choose a political party with polygamy or something like that. But you can choose your preference wisely, as far as the preference not came from money politics or political identity or something bad. Something we have to avoid in election. That's my final comment, Mbak Arum.
Thank you very much, Pak Zainal. Please give applause. Okay, so now to Prof. Eni, we also have one more question from Zoom. How can the people live in a country that recognizes democracy, but in the formations of regulations or law, the government itself does not listen to the aspirations of the people? The government wants people to never break the law, but on the other hand, the policymaker of regulations do not obey the law itself. So you may answer that and also give your closing statement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ibu Arum. I think this is very difficult for me to be here, as I'm not as academician, not as only as a docent, but now I'm a justice. I cannot say something about the case still on process. If you want me to say something, it means that you want me to be you want me violate of code of conduct. So I could bring to MK also. I think about the one question come from Amar, yeah. Constitutional Court has a code of conduct and behavior for justice. It's stated in number 9, 2006, adopted by Bangalore Principle. It's a very detailed what can be do and not can be do. It's very detailed. So I think as a justice, it is a silent position we cannot interact it with someone, limited for interaction like that. It's very, very difficulty to be a justice, I think. Like I don't have media, social media also. And like you, I think, you are a justice also here. My life is still limited now because of the code of conduct. If I violence code of conduct, and now Constitutional Court has a honorary council of the Constitutional Court, every justice can be bring to the honorary council, not only as a report but also as a funding, like these recent cases. I think this is clear. We have a code of conduct and behavior of justice. Yeah. And the second one about the chat question. I think you have to read the decision numbers 96. In the decision, we decide on ratio decidendi or legal reasoning, pertimbangan hukum. I mean pertimbangan hukum. Pertimbangan hukum is bound for everyone, not only Amar. This is the same position. This ratio decidendi, legal reasoning, atau pertimbangan hukum is the same with the Amar. It's a bond for everyone. In the legal reasoning, we mention about the public participation and how to use a meaningful participation. Yeah. Thanks God, now the decision adopted by the law number 13, 2020 regarding pembentukan peraturan perundang-undangan, lawmaking process, and in the elucidation stated that how to use meaningful participation. Now I think our task to support and encourage the government and parliament also how they can apply it more details. So the meaningful participation can be implemented. Yeah, like here, right to be heard, right to be considered, and right to be explained. Is a very important, I think, to be detailed not only in law but still in PP like that, yeah, peraturan pelaksanaan. And the last one come from tadi Mbak siapa yang berkerudung tadi ya, di hijab ya. Bahasa Indonesia ini berarti. Oke. Mahkamah Konstitusi sebetulnya sudah menerbitkan issued 66 icons of citizen constitutional rights. Jadi kami sudah menerbitkan 66 ikon mengenai hak-hak konstitusional warga negara. This is more detail if you compare with Komnas Perempuan. Komnas Perempuan hanya 44 hak-hak warga negara. Jadi kami dari MK telah meneliti, men-scrutinize sampai sedetail mungkin dengan timnya. Ini ada timnya Mas Lutfi di sini juga, ada Mas Cakim di sini juga, yang meneliti sedemikian rupa bahwa di dalam Undang-Undang Dasar kita setelah diamandemen itu ternyata terdapat 66 hak-hak konstitusional warga negara. Jadi lebih detail di situ. Yang kemudian divided into hak individual, hak kemudian vulnerable rights, dan hak kolektif. Jadi ada hak individual, hak kolektif, dan hak untuk masyarakat rentan. Sudah dikelompok-kelompokkan sedemikian rupa dan sudah kami sosialisasikan ke seluruh lapisan masyarakat. Untuk apa? Untuk memberikan sebuah pemahaman, kesadaran kepada seluruh masyarakat agar mereka juga aware terhadap substansi dari konstitusi. Sehingga ketika kemudian ada undang-undang atau mungkin peraturan apapun ya particularly undang-undang yang kemudian violence to the rights ya, mereka bisa bawa perkara itu kepada MK. MK lah yang akan kemudian menilai apakah betul ada violation to the rights. Jadi sudah ada itu dan kami sosialisasikan sedemikian rupa. Dan kami juga memudahkan akses to justice kepada siapapun yang akan membawa kasus ini ke MK. Karena MK tidak perlu kemudian untuk berperkara pakai lawyer, nggak perlu. Anda boleh siapapun ke MK. Kalau ke lembaga peradilan seperti di pengadilan di bawah Mahkamah Agung harus advokat yang jelas-jelas sudah disumpahkan begitu. Kalau di MK tidak, karena ini adalah bagian akses to justice. Karena yang Anda lawan itu adalah negara. Anda berhadapan tidak face to face seperti itu, tapi berhadapan dengan negara. Sehingga siapapun boleh. Not only lawyer, but also everyone can be bring your case. Ya itu, jadi bebas. Dan kemudian memberikan kemudahan juga lewat video conference ya. Ya, itu di setiap perguruan tinggi kami sudah punya 42 channel, artinya 42 collaboration dengan sekian perguruan tinggi untuk memudahkan orang-orang kemudian untuk menegakkan apa yang mereka inginkan sebagai bagian dari implementasi akses to justice terkait dengan HA itu. Bisa dimengerti ya? Bahasanya apa mau diganti bahasa Jawa lagi nih? Ya, saya kira itu ya. Oke, saya kira itu pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang disampaikan kepada saya ya. Kemudian close statement. Nah, saya berharap, I do hope not any cases, electoral cases to the MK. I do hope. But I think this is my close statement. I hope electoral justice can be implemented. This is a very important thing for democracy and social justice in Indonesia. This is our task to enforce the electoral justice. Yeah, we wait and for what the case can come to the MK the next year. Thank you very much.
Please give applause. So, sorry for the time limitation. I don't think we can open for more session yet because it should be ended at 11. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation, Prof. Eni, Dr. Zainal, and Prof. Simon. And thank you also for the participants for joining this online and offline. To mention, this session is also taken as the introductory meeting for constitutional law and HTM classes. So for the students may take notes or questions from today's discussion, and we can further discuss this during our class starting next week. I hereby close the session and give time back to the MC. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for Mrs. Dr. Maharum and all of the speaker. Please have your seat back. Now we move to the next agenda. The submission of flags and certificates will be submitted by Dr. Yance Arizona SH MH MA. For Dr. Yance Arizona and our honorable invited speakers, please come and the submission, the flags and certificates. ladies and gentlemen, all the guests and audiences. We're going to the last agenda, that is closing. Let's close our agenda by reciting Hamdalah together. Our agenda is running well, Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Thanks 1,000 times for all of participants who have been a good participant in this event. As human beings, we realize that we can avoid the mistakes. I, Lewi Ana, as a master ceremony, represent all of the committees for the second International Postgraduate Student Conference, would like to apologize if there is any mistake during the events. Thank you for the nice attention. The last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The next session is to take a picture with the speakers and the moderators and the dean's representative. Take a picture, yes. And for all the participants, after this, our next agenda is a break and lunch until 1 p.m. Lunch is taken at the registration desk, followed by parallel session activities in Building 5, B5 floor. For the first session, all the participants will be welcome to choose between room B4, B52, B53, and